Welcome back to yet another episode of Get Weird with me, your host, Brittany Barbieri. Guys, welcome back to another episode. Thank you for tuning in. Today's episode, well, listen, I'm mixing it up. I am tired of the same old regurgitated stories over and over again, and this one you just don't hear a lot of. Perhaps maybe because of the climate we live in, people are too scared to talk about it because of the reality and the psychological warfare it might put on you. I don't know. But that's what I'm here for. Time to wake you up and get you ready for your day. If you're listening to me in the middle of a workout, make sure that your feet are clicked into your Peloton because we're about to take off. So on this particular episode, I am going to title it The Night the Air Turned Against Us. For some of you, you may know this case if you're into the unknown, unexplained mysteries of history that have happened over decades. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this case, you're welcome. You're learning something new today, and I'll give you the name of it, and you can look into it later yourself, whether you're on a lunch break or using the body. You're welcome. I gave you some toilet read. You don't need a newspaper now. So here is a question I have for you as my listener. Have you ever gotten that feeling like something is wrong, but you just can't quite put your finger on it? You know what I'm saying? Like you can't see it. Heck, you can't even really hear it or anything else, but you know what? You just freaking feel it. Now imagine that feeling taking over you in the middle of the night as you are laying in your bed. Now in our bed, I don't know about you, but that is like my time, okay? When I am laying in my bed and I am relaxed for the evening, ready to get my sleep, I am defenseless, I am vulnerable, and I am ready just to call it a night, okay? So let's go back to 1944 in Mattoon, Illinois, because that is exactly what people said happened to them. A weird feeling took over them suddenly, and then it got freaking weird from there. So in this particular case, again, I'm not really sure why nobody talks about this. And again, it could just be psychological warfare and people don't want to talk about it. But let me tell you what, once you hear it, folks, it will stick with you, I promise. If you're interested in looking into this case, you can look it up under the name the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. Mattoon. Apologies for that. My phone just went off. You know how it goes. So again, this particular case started as something very simple and something that realistically you probably would push off. You would probably be like, it's not a big deal because it started with a smell. And I don't know about you guys, but with me, if I'm in my kitchen or I'm in my house and I get a weird smell, I try and locate it. And then if it dissipates, I'm like, well, that's strange, but whatever. I don't pay attention to it. Maybe something is rotting in my outdoor refrigerator. You know what I mean? Like we all have that moment. And some people might even think they're like, oh my God, I have a demon in my house. No, it's just my rotted fruit. You know what I mean? Like we get odd smells in our home. So this is how this started. And, most people would probably push that off. However, this was not a rotted smell that people were smelling. The smell was actually rather pleasant. Some reported saying that it smelled like perfume, flowers. One report even said from an individual that it was like potpourri. If you know what potpourri is, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, this was a thing. I think it was first created like in the 17th or 18th century. I think it was the 17th century, potpourri. But interestingly enough, it smelled like that, which is, I don't know about you. I'm not a big potpourri fan. I think it smelled awful growing up. Everybody had it. Craft stores galore. But some people actually liked the smell. Some people said it smelled like flowers at first, so they really didn't think anything about it. They thought maybe something was blooming. And then, things have to get worse because it can never just be, a random smell and everything is fine. Absolutely no, this is not Truman Show. Things are going to get worse. Actually, Truman Show, things did get worse, so that's not a good analogy. But regardless, this is not good. So after people started smelling the smell, your body started to hurt, started to ache. Your legs started to feel heavy. People reported arms aren't unable to move, almost like paralyzing them. Throats were burning as if they were breathing in something that was toxic. Others claimed that their vision was blurry, like they couldn't even see, which is so strange. So everybody kind of had the same feeling, but started to feel it differently first, like different reactions started happening. And the worst part is actually, it's not even the worst part. The part that I think I like about the case is that it didn't just happen to one person. So you can't just say it was just one-off crazy person, like happened to a bunch of people in this town at the same time. So people started reporting, this case, I'll just forget it. I'm going ahead of myself here. So then following all of the reports of like physical stuff, then people started to have a reporting of seeing a figure, a shadowy figure, like kind of like a guy, like a man lurking outside their windows or whatever, kind of watching them, observing them, which I think is really, really weird. The major report did come from a woman named Mrs. Carney. Okay, so Mrs. Carney, she was at home when she smelt this strange scent come through her home. Again, she did not report it as being like a scary scent. Is there such thing? I guess there is. Demons. As like a bad odor. It was very like perfumey. She was smelling it. But then her legs started to go numb. She couldn't walk and she could barely speak. So she almost like realistically started to become paralyzed, and her husband rushed home. And by the time her husband got home to get to her, she was completely disoriented. But just outside of her house, though, they both reported seeing this strange figure, like peering in, looking in, and then vanishing into the darkness of the street, allegedly. So for me, that's where it gets weird. So not only do we have what seems to be some kind of chemical in the air, but people observing people being affected by this said chemical. And it doesn't stop there. So it's not just this one account with this couple. No, it actually begins to be like dozens of people are across different parts of the town are starting to report the exact same thing. It started with the smell, then all the same symptoms. And then, of course, now we have this mass fear that begins to break out in Mattoon, Illinois, where people are starting to wake up in the middle of the night, literally paralyzed, and they can't freaking move. Now, again, it's one thing if it's one or two people, like, and let's say those two people know each other and be like, oh my God, yeah, Betty, me too. Oh my God, me too. Okay, maybe they're just hallucinating together. You know what I mean? Like now all of a sudden Susan has what Betty has, but really it was just Betty experiencing this. And now Susan, because she's one of those, she has to go through everything you're going through because she just has to have sympathy from everybody in town for whatever freaking reason, who frippin' knows, So that would be where my brain would go as an investigator, that I'd immediately start retracting back and be like, well, it's just a one-off. It could just be maybe she has some medical condition that she's not addressing. But when it becomes dozens of people in a town, I got questions. My eyebrows raise, and the deep journalist, field researcher inside of me goes, okay, we need to dig into this a little bit deeper. This isn't adding up. This isn't right. Other people, they did start basically saying that when they started having these feelings of like an unsettling, uneasy feeling take over them, and then they almost became like became paralyzed. They had claimed to different investigators and journalists that they felt as though they were being watched before whatever this was in the air even hit them, which I find very fascinating. And so when that was researched into, the few that claim to have actually seen the figure detailed it as a tall person dressed in dark clothing, and the face was kind of unclear, like they kind of kept it in the shadows on purpose to like hide their face, hide who they really were. So, of course, as this mass hysteria breaks out in this town, people are freaking out, and everyone's having this strange physical, whatever you want to call it, reaction to whatever is happening in this little tiny town. Look it up, tiny town. The police were called to investigate, and then the police were called again, and then they were called again, and the police were just like notating these calls of people being like, hey, something's happening to me. I can't feel my legs. I can't walk. I can't breathe. My wife can't talk. She's lost her voice. My husband can't move his arms and legs. Like, what's going on? So all these calls are coming to the police department over and over and over again. So finally they sent out dispatches to go and search these homes. Pick up on the claims of like seeing somebody outside of the home, and then the smell and this, that, and the other. So the police, of course, investigated the houses. They checked all the windows. They even looked for footprints, tools, anything left behind that would remotely give clues that something unsettling happened here. Okay. That would make the police go, okay, we need to really get, somebody else higher than us involved in this, because this is really crazy. These people, you can literally see the physical disturbance here, but yet we can't find any evidence of anybody here, because this is something that came in the air. It didn't even come from like somebody setting something outside of somebody's house and like detonating it. You know what I mean? To like go off like a smoke gas. You know what I mean? So no, they didn't find anything. And there was no devices, no containers, no physical evidence of any gas even being used in the area. From any kind of containers or any kind of, compound mixes outside of people's home, like nothing, absolutely nothing. So the authorities started leaning more towards the idea that this was just a mass hysteria, right? So one person has it, then the next person believes they have it, then they all just start believing they have it and giving themselves this physical illness, okay? So they were basically saying that people were scaring themselves into being sick, scaring themselves into believing that they too had whatever happened to the original first couple that came clean. And of course, fear is always going to spread faster than facts. So no matter what the truth is behind it, the fear is going to floodgate everything before we get to this. And so, yes, if you look at this case, if you're thinking analytical or you're thinking very logical or very black and white, you could go, it could be mass hysteria, because mass hysteria is a real thing. It does happen. People can convince themselves. And there are people that will tell a lie over and over and over and over again, repeatedly, that they actually believe their own lie and can be investigated on that lie. And they will pass every lie detector test possible, because they literally have believed their own lie into existence. So I know that our mind is very powerful and we can make things happen when we actually tap into our brain, okay? And I get that we've seen mass hysteria before in different things, but however, what really makes it weird for me is that some of these victims really did have physical symptoms. And that is where, I have a hard time with this, just ruling it out as mass hysteria, even as an investigator, even knowing that that is a true thing and that has happened. We have documented stories throughout history of mass hysteria creating mass chaos. And so I know that it's real. I know that it exists. But when we have people that are truly temporarily paralyzed, and having what would appear to be burning sensations in their throat and on their skin, and even to the point of vomiting, you got to get to yourself where you're like, how is this just all in their head? So are they making their skin look red as if their body is burning? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we have to, so then it taps into a whole other question of, psychological warfare, and also the ability of the mind to create such symptoms to the point to where you physically can see them. Not unheard of. Okay. But, and there's a lot of history on that, and you all know what I'm talking about, but there are other theories. So, we're talking industrial pollution was a theory that was speculated, possibly, because Mattoon had factories nearby, and it was, wartime. So there were chemicals in the air. It was wartime production. So, maybe something leaked. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes when we have things that are airborne, it's invisible to the naked eye, but it does infiltrate, and it drifts into houses. It drifts into buildings. It drifts into cars. It drifts into the way of life through air ducts and open windows and cracks and doors and all these different things. So, it still doesn't explain why people keep seeing a person. Okay. Doesn't explain that aspect of this as to why people are still seeing some dude outside of their house, watching them getting sick and being paralyzed and unable to do anything physically. And it definitely doesn't explain the attacks that people felt like they were targeted, like they were purposely targeted within their home to see how the chemical reacted with each individual. So now let's talk about the timing of this incident. Okay, let's bring that into a factor. It's 1944, people. We are right in the middle of World War II, and the U.S. they are researching chemical agents, right? And they're testing things. They're experimenting. We are in the midst of all of this, okay? Now, I am not saying, I'm putting on record that the government did this. Do not misunderstand what I'm saying at all. I am not saying that. I want to clearly state that too. No, these are theories, okay? But, when you experiment with things and things get out, I'm just saying. So you kind of have to ask yourself, was it just hysteria? Did these people really woo, go cuckoo? And then, Betty had it, then Susan had it, then Jim had it, then Bob had it, then Betty had it again. And then, whatever. It just keeps going down the line. Or did something else happen that nobody wanted to admit at the time? Okay. Did nobody want to say, yes, we're sorry. We chose a small town that we figured nobody would ever know. We knew we did this, but we tested some chemical agents on a little small population to see how the reaction would be so that we could use it overseas. Or just, oh, we're sorry, we were experimenting in one of our chemical labs and it got out, and we were sending people around to make sure that it didn't get out, and then it did get out, and so those guys reported back to us, and we just wanted to cover it up and put it under the rug, and it never happened. You didn't see what you thought you saw. Yes, mass hysteria, go with that. That's fantastic. Now, let us not forget that this is 1944, and in 1947, the Roswell incident happened. A lot of cover up with that. Over 200 people were told over years and years to cover it up. Don't talk about it. And you think I'm making up a crazy number. I'm not. It was over like 200 people. There was like 200 witnesses that even on deathbed confessions came forward and talked about it. So, yeah. And I know that for a fact. And I can say that because literally we'll do that on another episode. So anyway, cover-ups happen. People are told, keep your mouth quiet, which is good in some cases. A lot of people, and I just want to add this really quick. So most people get so mad when they're like, why does the government tell us stuff? Why can't the government just be honest and tell us stuff? They don't understand, if you are not privy to that information, you're not going to know it. It's not like the government's just going to come out one day and be like, hey, Jim, I'm just going to pick you out of Kansas and tell you frickin' everything about how the government is ran, all the black level, black op teams and what they do on different islands across the globe. No, absolutely not. There's such thing as national security. And these things are in for a reason. The government has to have some stuff that doesn't get out, because if it is in the wrong hands, guys, it can turn against us as our own society, as our own freaking United States. The mentality of thinking that if you just called the White House, the president's going to freaking tell you all the secrets is insane to me. Or if you were to call and talk to, somebody in the government, they're going to know exactly what's going on at level 11, but they're only at level 2. There is an internal working there. And to be quite honest with you, I don't want to freaking know half the crap that goes on. I don't. I really don't. I'm cool living out here trying to figure out what next species can we discover to save an ecosystem. I'm good with that. I don't need to know what's going on behind closed doors in a government facility, because sometimes ignorance is bliss. I don't freaking want to know. And I don't want to have to be the person that's like, now I know so much. Ooh, we know. You know what I'm saying. I don't want that. I'd rather just not know. And I understand why we need to not know, because it is about national security. And sometimes some things are tested and created as a weapon for a reason to protect us. And if it's in the hands of the wrong person, it is a bad thing. So for me, I'm cool not knowing. Putting that out on record, because sometimes ignorance is bliss on this aspect of stuff. Okay? You know what I'm saying? Okay. And let that sink in, because no. So let's get back to the story here. So when it comes to this particular story, right? If nobody wants to admit what really happened in 1944, fine. Let it be. But the truth is, nobody was ever caught, okay? This wasn't like, if you guys remember the part in history about anthrax, they think they pretty much figured out who it was, who did the whole anthrax threat. Everybody does enough investigation, they start to figure out who it was, who it may have came from, what it was started, and there might be a little bit more information out now, since I haven't really reopened this case since I wrote it all down, years ago when I was first diving into strange, unknown cases about, air chemicals and stuff like that, because of radiation poisoning and all this different stuff that follows suit with UFO sightings, right? Like all these different supernatural sightings. And so you dive deep into some of these things, and then you start to learn about other cases that happened during World War II and other cases that happened in different parts of the world and different things like this. And this is one. So again, no one was ever caught, No one was ever charged for any of this, which would be considered like a criminal action if somebody did get caught using a type of chemical compound on somebody to hurt them, to off them, whatever the case is. That's dangerous stuff. That's serious stuff. And the attacks, it happened for a period of time, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. And I know that it sounds crazy, and I know that you're left with wondering, well, then what happened? And with that many reports of people experiencing so much in this small town, I know that we jump to the conspiracy immediately that, oh my gosh, did the government use this small town to test this chemical to see if it works, if they could paralyze their enemies long enough to do what they needed to do and get out? I mean, it's a cool thought. I mean, my God, if we have that kind of tech, hey now. Now again, there are theories about like sound that they're using to paralyze people to go in and infiltrate and leave. And they paralyze the enemies based on sound, which is awesome, like a certain frequency. I know you guys think that's nuts, but I think that's fantastic. That's amazing. But again, these are all theories. There's a lot of people that come out and talk about it. Some of those people go missing. I don't want to talk about that either. You know what I'm saying? Like, ooh, it's right on the cusp of, I don't want to talk about that. Don't stay away from me. But the part that continues to stick with me is it wasn't the smell or the symptoms. I mean, that is a piece of it, but the entire town experienced something real, and it was real enough to call the cops. It was real enough to make headlines, and it was real enough to bring down different investigators and journalists and people to investigate these claims and meet the people that were experiencing this type of trauma and determine that something very real took place, whether it be hysteria, whether it be a chemical compound that they were testing on a small town, whether it be something that leaked and wasn't meant to get out and people were like dropping by and checking on people, be like, nobody died, boss, everybody's good, just let's not talk about this again. I mean, it's like a movie, you know what I'm saying? So we still don't have an answer this many years into the future. We still don't know what the heck happened. So we're left with like this really cool conspiracy-driven mystery of either mass hysteria or a chemical that leaked out. And the further you dig into this, there are some reports that are questionable. There are some documentation from different facilities in the area that bring an eyebrow up. And if you research into this for yourself, there are some archival things online that you can read up about this with newspaper and those headlines like I had mentioned. Obviously, the resources I recommend using are legitimate, like archival, library, at the time journalists' work or written journal work or things like that. There's ways to research these findings, as well as different people that lived it or went through it, which is kind of rare today to find those individuals, obviously, because it was 1944. But there are people that remember it through their family members and being told down and cousins and siblings and things like that it gets passed down, that it happened to their family and so on and so forth. So, do the research, look into it for yourself. Don't Google AI it. Okay. Promise me you won't. Pinky promise. But look into it. It's one of those cases that honestly, the question still remains. What do you think really happened there? What creeped in the air that day, that evening, and created this moment in history that has left us scratching our head, pondering on what could have happened in Mattoon, Illinois in 1944. So, you're welcome for giving you something to think about. Maybe you are a internal investigator and love to deep dive into things. And if that's the case, my golly, read into this one. You're going to love it. But on the other side of this, folks, be cautious, be careful, stay curious, and always stay weird. And until next time, I will continue to keep up my weirdness. That's what I do. And yeah, I will make sure to have another fun case for you guys next Friday. And until then, guys, please spoil your moms this weekend. She deserves it more than anything in the world. You have no idea what your grandmothers or mothers have been through. Even your aunts who are a mom, a friend that's a mom, just give them a little credit this week. They've been through a lot. They've done a lot for you. They showed up when nobody else would. And make sure that they know how much they're loved and appreciated. If you haven't talked to your mom in a little bit, pick up the phone, give her a call, catch up with her. It's going to make her day. Trust me. If you're near your mom, take her to lunch, spoil the hell out of her, and make sure she knows just because you don't call every day, or maybe you don't tell her you love her every day, that you're still so thankful and so grateful for her, because she does matter today. And the smallest little kindness of action on Mother's Day really goes a long way. So if there are dishes in that sink, to all the husbands out there, wash them. Don't make your wife wash them. Wash them that day. If the floor needs to be vacuumed, freaking vacuum it. If dinner needs to be made, make that dinner. Do the laundry for her. Do something that takes a little bit of that stress off, and let that woman sit on that sofa for just a minute without hearing, Mom, 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 honey, did you call? Honey, did you call? Honey, did you go to the store? Did you grab this? Mom, did you get my boots? Mom, did you dump the sand out of my shoes from the schoolyard? Mom, did you take care of my homework? Did you make sure it was back in my bag? Mom, did you make my lunch for school tomorrow? Mom, did you make sure that my new sheets were on my bed before I left for school today? Mom, is there gas in the van? Yeah, I could go on, folks. Yeah, that was long. I know, but that's the facts. It's the facts. All right, guys, have a great week. Happy Mother's Day to all you incredible mothers out there who have been just killing it lately. This day is for you. Have a great weekend, everybody. And until next time, as I always say, stay weird.